Have you ever heard the term legal fiction and wondered what that actually is? Well, you wouldn't be alone. A legal fiction is a term often used in the legal industry, especially in judgments and judicial reasoning, but it is rarely explained. At its core, a legal fiction is an assumption or assertion utilised by a court or in legal reasoning for the purpose of resolving a legal issue. This assumption or assertion essentially operates to alter or modify a specific fact or rule of law, ultimately leaving the legal rule in question unchanged, which therefore allows for flexibility in the law. Here are some examples to contextualise this rule from more of a practical perspective and why such a rule might be necessary. One example is what is known as the Comorientes rule. Imagine a scenario where there are 4 people who tragically die in a single accident, and it is impossible to scientifically know the order in which they died. In the context of inheritance and estate law, the rule operates as a legal fiction to assume that the oldest person predeceased the younger persons. Whilst this isn't necessarily the truth, the legal fiction is making an assumption for legal purposes. Another example of a legal fiction is what is known as the retrospective annihilation of bankruptcy. In bankruptcy law, the concept of annulment legally places a bankrupt person in the same position as if they had never experienced a bankruptcy, even though technically they had. Here, the legal fiction is altering the technical reality of the case and creating a fiction for legal purposes. One of the most common legal fictions to cement this concept is the very concept of a company. At law, we know that a company operates as a legal person. However, in reality, we know that a company is in fact not a human or a person, and they technically do not actually exist. However, for the purposes of law and the very society in which we live, companies are legal entities that do exist and can face liability in various situations, enter contracts, and so forth. This is a prime example of a legal fiction, that is, a rule that is altering reality in some way for legal purposes. As stated by John Gwilliam in his paper Legal Fictions: A Critical Analysis, the use of any abstract ideas ultimately involves a resort to some type of fiction. If you consider the very concept of justice itself, this in itself is a fiction. Everyone's conception of this is different. The human mind ultimately must resort to fictions to cope with reality and apply the law appropriately.